course, I'll be given jail time.
Do you regret coming here?
Definitely, 100%. The only regret I don't have is my son. And if I can erase everything and have my son in America, I would have preferred that.
Wow, Richard Engel joins me now live. Richard, where is she now?
So, Hoda Muthana is in this part of a refugee camp. The whole refugee camp, which is not far from where I am now in northeast Syria, is a sprawling, trash-strewn facility, a tented camp, canvas tents, and there are about 40,000 people there. And in this large camp, there is a section for ISIS family members, the wives, the children of people who were married to ISIS fighters and their children. And it is a closed facility. The people inside can't leave. And this is just for foreigners. There were almost 1,600 people in this detention facility from 48 different countries. We went there. We went to the tent where Hoda Muthana was staying. Initially, she didn't want to talk to us. Eventually, she agreed, and we sat down and we asked her not just about her legal disputes with the government. Her father has now filed a suit in order to get her passport back so that she can go to the United States to face trial. But we also asked her, why did she come here? Why did she want to go to ISIS territory? And then why, while she was in ISIS territory, was her Twitter account sending out inflammatory messages calling on Americans to carry out attacks against fellow American citizens? She said that her lawyers advised her not to talk about her social media use.
Well, at the same time, you and I were both in Munich, and I'm sure you heard what I was hearing. Real anger from the American officials there, Republicans as well as Democrats, about the troop withdrawal from Syria, certainly from the allies. And now the White House says that they are going to send or leave 200 troops there. They call them peacekeepers, but more appropriately, they are special forces, not UN-mandated peacekeepers. Where do you think this is going, and why do you think they're bending to this pressure?
So there are so many issues here right now. First, there is the issue of thousands of ISIS family members here, like Hoda Muthana, who don't really know what's going to happen to them because their host countries in Europe and the United States don't seem to be willing to take them back. Then there is the issue of ISIS itself. ISIS is collapsing. It is in a state of catastrophic collapse. I spoke earlier today with the leader of the Kurdish-led forces who are fighting alongside U.S. troops, and he told me that the military campaign against ISIS is over, but there is a little bit of a mop-up operation. They're still trying to remove some families who are being used as human shields to root out the last few ISIS fighters, and then they will declare a formal victory soon. But then what happens? The U.S.-backed forces here were terrified. What would happen to this vacuum left after ISIS? The Assad regime has been making overtures that it would send its forces into this area. Where I am now, there are not Assad forces. The Turks have been threatening to invade. Russia has talked about establishing its presence in the area, Iran as well. And there was this major concern about these U.S.-backed forces that if all U.S. forces left, that these other countries, Russia, Iran, Turkey, the Assad regime, would move in and take over. Now, the commander said with a small force, just even 200, which will bring in other coalition members or guarantee that other coalition members will stay, namely the British and the French, they think they have a chance to change the dynamic here and not see a Turkish invasion and not see more Iranian and Russian influence in this part of Syria. So it sounds like it could be a small move just with 200 special forces, but for the commanders here, they think it is a game changer.
Wow. Thank you so much, Richard Engel. Please be safe. And for more of Richard's exclusive reporting from Syria, of course, tune in to NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt tonight. And coming up, round two, after a dramatic courtroom showdown, officials order a new election in North Carolina for the last contested congressional race. Stay with us. You're watching Andrea Mitchell Reports on MSNBC.
Sesame chicken. Cow chicken, not fried chicken. Yes. Bibimbap. Yes. East-West salad.
Grubhub delivery app? If you want it all, you can get it all. Grubhub. Restaurants you love, delivered.
Many older Americans are in a tough spot right now. They just don't have enough savings to get by. It's their biggest concern. So, why not use a reverse mortgage loan to access your home's equity?
Find out more. Call us today to receive a free information kit with a DVD presented by Tom Selleck.
A reverse mortgage loan from AAG uses your built-up home equity to give you cash now, and when you need it in the future. Pay it back when it works for you, or in one lump sum when you leave the home.
Call now for a free no-obligation information kit to find out how a home equity conversion mortgage loan can pay for living expenses, medical costs, even credit card bills.
I've done my homework, and I know how dedicated AAG is to helping retirees in a caring, ethical way. I trust them. I think you can too.
Call 1-800-342-0248.
I'm mildly obsessed with numbers. So I started with the stats regarding my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. Like how Humira has been prescribed to over 300,000 patients. And how many patients saw clear or almost clear skin in just 4 months. The kind of clearance that can last. Humira targets and blocks a specific source of inflammation that contributes to symptoms. Numbers are great, and seeing clear skin, it's pretty awesome too. That's what I call a body of proof.
Humira can lower your ability to fight infections. Serious and sometimes fatal infections, including tuberculosis and cancers, including lymphoma, have happened, as have blood, liver, and nervous system problems, serious allergic reactions, and new or worsening heart failure. Tell your doctor if you've been to areas where certain fungal infections are common, and if you've had TB, hepatitis B, are prone to infections, or have flu-like symptoms or sores. Don't start Humira if you have an infection.
Want more proof? Ask your dermatologist about Humira. This is my body of proof.
Duncan just protected his family with a $500,000 life insurance policy. How much do you think it cost him? $100 a month? $75? $50? Actually, Duncan got his $500,000 for under $28 a month. Less than $1 a day. His secret? SelectQuote. In just minutes, a SelectQuote agent will comparison shop nearly a dozen highly rated life insurance companies and give you a choice of your 5 best rates. Duncan's wife, Cassie, got a $750,000 policy for under $23 a month. Give your family the security it needs at a price you can afford. Since 1985, SelectQuote has saved over 1 million families millions of dollars on life insurance. Call now, 800-711-7857, or visit SelectQuote.com. Discover what over 1 million families know now. We shop, you save.
Election officials in North Carolina have ordered a new election in the last undecided congressional House seat after a dramatic hearing pitting the Republican candidate Mark Harris against his own son, a prosecutor who testified against his own father. Watch father and son.
I love my dad, and I love my mom. Okay. I certainly have no vendetta against them. No family scores to settle. Okay? I think that they made mistakes in this process, and they certainly did things differently than I would have done them.
Through the testimony I've listened to over the past 3 days, I believe a new election should be called.
It was a pretty dramatic moment in that courtroom. The move follows testimony this week that a political operative orchestrated an absentee ballot scheme for the Republican, Mark Harris, to try and sway the race in the state's 9th district in favor of the Republican, who, of course, held a slim lead of only 905 votes over his Democratic opponent, Dan McCready, in those unofficial results. Joining me now is Heidi Prisbilla, NBC News national political correspondent. I mean, this race is still not decided, and for all the talk about election fraud and how all these voters were double voting and ghost voting, this is real election fraud. I think that's proved example.
That's the most important takeaway here, Andrea, because you and I both remember how desperately President Trump wanted to make election fraud an issue during the campaign, even suggesting that there have been millions of illegal ballots cast in California California, which was absolutely no evidence of, that he actually formed a commission early on in his administration to study this notion of fraud. They never found anything. The commission was shuttered.
Really met. They disbanded.
Correct. They disbanded. They found nothing. But in the history books will be this one very prominent case, which was a case of Republicans in his own party trying to do exactly that. Overall, in the grand scheme, it's a bad development because up until now, we really haven't had this type of evidence. So what it does is just undermines confidence in the system. But hopefully people will be on guard in the future. And this is a good lesson to see that there was ultimately an election, a re-election, a revote of the election called for, and that there will be a do-over here.
And Leanne Caldwell is down in North Carolina, has covered all of this. Leanne joins us by phone. Leanne, you were there when all this happened, the father-son drama. For Mark Harris to say he believes there should be an election is pretty stunning.
Andrea, it was incredible. It was an unexpected turn throughout this entire situation. I mean, the first unexpected moment was when his son took the stand to testify really against him. And then the second was when Mark Harris, he took a stand and continued to try to defend himself. And then he almost perjured himself until his attorney stood up and had to intervene. They went to a break. 2-hour-long break. They came back, and Mark Harris said that he wanted to retract the statement that he made that was going to possibly give him some perjury problems. And then he said he wanted to call for a new election. It was stunning, and especially since Mark Harris throughout this entire campaign since the election, he has been pushing the board to certify this race, to distance himself from any illegal activity that happened, and for him to be the final, really the one to say, look, there's no confidence in the election, it needs to be redone. It was just a monumental moment, Andrea.
Well, and Leanne, your reporting has been incredible from down there. We thank you so much. And Heidi, this does put it in play. Now, does Dan McCready run, or does Mark Harris probably not run again, given all this drama?
It sounds like, based on Leanne's great reporting, that most likely he does not run. There's so much more going on here other than just that it affected the election. There was charges of perjury, charges of him writing illegal checks to PACs. You've got his health considerations. And so it seems like maybe that the pendulum would swing towards him not running. Then the question is, how much does this become like other recent special elections that we've seen before the midterms, that both parties view it as kind of a harbinger of the upcoming election and a finger in the wind where we should invest a lot of money in this outcome, and whether this whole episode actually affects the outcome, if it flips this to Democrats, because there is a backlash against what happened down there. There's a lot here to play out, and we'll just have to see whether the parties view it as a worthy investment to kind of go to fisticuffs here.
And it clearly depends on also who the candidates are. If it becomes a proxy fight, also how much money they put in. When do you think they might have this special?
Probably May is, based on Leanne's reporting, that they would do that in May, but for the whole process to play out, almost a year that the seat may remain vacant.
People of that district should not have representation in Congress. Thanks to you, Heidi. Thanks to Leanne Caldwell, who's been down there and intrepid throughout. That does it for this edition of Andrea Mitchell Reports, and for the week. Thanks so much for being with us. Remember to follow the show online on Facebook and on Twitter at Mitchell Reports. I'll be joining Chuck on Meet the Press on Sunday. And here is Stephanie Rule for Velshi and Rule.
Thanks so much, Andrea. Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Rule, my partner, Ali Velshi, on assignment. It is Friday, February 22nd. Let's get smarter. We begin today with the president and his legal team racing for the special counsel's Russia report as a judge silences Roger Stone, banning him from talking publicly about his case. Robert Mueller or the Russia investigation.
We're seeing the same reports that you are, that it's possible that this is coming to a conclusion, that his report will be finished, and we feel good about the fact that what we've said all along for the last 2 years will be clear. There was no collusion.
I can't imagine that the special counsel is not going to release something that shows a roadmap for the House to investigate a conspiracy to answer it as a political question.
Impeachment, you mean?
Correct.
And judge rules prosecutors broke the law by signing a secret plea deal with politically connected billionaire sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and hiding it from the victims. One of the prosecutors, now President Trump's labor secretary.
How is this man still the United States cabinet secretary? Now, I think that's a valid question. Why is he still there today? Why was he nominated? I mean, these are things that were known.
We can't get desensitized to this. You have someone in the administration right now who was part of protecting it and lying and keeping children in the dark and abused. This is to catch a predator and then letting him go.
The woman who joined ISIS in Syria and is now suing the Trump administration to allow her to return to the United States is speaking exclusively to NBC News for the first time since being told she can't return.
Do you think you'll be able to go back to the United States? Do you want to go to the United States?
I prefer America other than anywhere else. Yeah.
And what do you want to do if you went back to the States? What do you think will happen to you if you were to have to go back?
Of course, I'll be given jail time.
Oof, a lot to cover. The president's lawyers are preparing for Robert Mueller to drop a potentially devastating report on Attorney General Bill Barr's desk. But that is not the only threat facing President Trump, as his former personal attorney and fixer, Michael Cohen, is now scheduled to appear before 3 congressional committees, 2 closed sessions with the House and Senate Intelligence Committees, and a public hearing on Wednesday, just as the president is set to meet with Kim Jong-un. So what exactly could he tell them? Well, remember, Cohen was hired by Donald Trump back in 2005, and he did a little legal work, but allegedly served as a fixer, doing the businessman's dirty work. How does someone get a job like that? A lot of people have been asking. Well, the president, he hinted at it back in November.
If Cohen is such a bum, why did you hire him, have him on your payroll for 12 years, and have him do so much of your dirty work?
Because a long time ago, he did me a favor. A long time ago, he did me a favor.
So what favor could Cohen have possibly done to earn the president's trust for all those years? Well, that still remains a mystery. But whatever the favor is, I'm sure those congressional committees will be interested. What we do know is this. Cohen pursued a Trump Tower Moscow deal well into the 2016 campaign season with the goal to secure land and create relationships with high-level Russian government officials, including Vladimir Putin's press secretary. And we know that he paid Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels to stay quiet about their alleged affairs with the presidential candidate just weeks before the election. Those acts, Cohen testified, were at the direction of individual one, Donald Trump. They were also felonies. But Cohen is already in the hot seat on Capitol Hill, having lied to Congress in his previous testimony, and congressional investigators will have a lot to ask about and could probe the materials that were seized from Cohen. Remember this, back in April 2018, when federal agents raided Cohen's office in Rockefeller Center, his hotel room at the Regency Hotel. In that operation, they seized 8 boxes of files, 4 cell phones, an iPad, and several hard drives. Lawyers then spent months combing through the material to weed out privileged information before determining that more than 1 million pieces of evidence were reportedly eligible to be turned over to prosecutors. That is a lot. So joining me now, NBC News investigations reporter, my friend Tom Winter, former federal prosecutor Kathy Fleming, and Bloomberg News White House reporter, my friend Shannon Pettypiece. Tomas, walk us through this. Michael Cohen was on Capitol Hill yesterday. Do we know exactly what it was about and what we expect next week? Because Lanny Davis has tried to paint this picture that Michael Cohen is going to tell you about the reprehensible person Donald Trump was and try to make us forget Michael Cohen was his wingman.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question, and I know our Capitol Hill team has been trying to exhaust and figure out exactly what it is that Michael Cohen was doing yesterday on Capitol Hill. I think when you look at this, Stephanie, I think you're going to look at somebody who is already allocated in court. They've already detailed their crimes. This isn't something where there was a trial and Michael Cohen didn't take the stand. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to all the counts that he faced, and he laid out, and he specifically said, individual one in this criminal information is the president himself. He specifically implicated the president in campaign finance crimes. So there's been nothing that we've seen to date that Michael Cohen hasn't explicitly said as far as alleged crimes involving the president, that may have involved the president, I should say, or that the president was aware of, or that involved the president in some way. So I don't know how much more information we're going to get unless there are certain things that have not been charged, that have not been brought up in court, and could he speak to that? I think it's very clear how Michael Cohen feels about his character because he says that he did the president's dirty deeds, and he said that in court during his sentencing. So I would expect that we would get more of that from Michael Cohen, but to the extent that there's been conduct that hasn't been charged that may speak to the president, that's something that we might hear about next week.
But the Mueller report is going to be is potentially far more damaging than Cohen. Anything that Cohen could tell us, Mueller already knows.
Well, that's a really good point, because as we know from court filings, we know that Michael Cohen has met with the special counsel's office on numerous occasions. So as part of that meeting, as part of those sessions, anything that he could offer, he's already given to them. And presumably that information that he's provided to prosecutors has either been corroborated or matches. Other information that they've received, so I think we would get a fuller picture potentially. There are restrictions.
Guilty, they're lying to Congress. And part of what he's doing, he's in 2 closed sessions and he's in a public session. And one of the reasons I think he's on Capitol Hill this week is preparing to testify both privately and publicly, because part of what he's doing is preparing for his sentencing. He has to come across as credible, turning over a new leaf. I've now come to God. I now understand what's going on. I'm now credible. Yes, I've lied before, but now I'm telling the truth. And when you are a defense attorney, this is a dream come true, to be able to cross-examine somebody who's pled guilty to false statements and perjury and lying under oath, because you say basically you lied before, the oath means nothing, you've lied now. So I think it's going to be interesting, because what courts will tell someone when they're assessing a witness is, look at the demeanor. Does he look you in the eye? Is he corroborated by documents? Do you believe him? Is he lying about stupid things? Is he lying about important things? What do you take out of it? Use your common sense. So when we look at these things, and remember, there were 1 million documents that were found not to be privileged. As a lawyer, that's a really astonishing thing. And I have to remind something else about it. This is a lawyer who recorded his clients. That's unethical. It's inappropriate. It's something that, as a lawyer, I
it may be illegal too, depending upon where the calls took place.
It's just extraordinary that somebody would do that. In New York, consensual taping is okay if one person's on it, but not if you're a lawyer. It's unethical. It's inappropriate. And by the way, why are you representing a client if you don't trust him enough that you feel you have to record his calls? So if I'm a defense attorney and I'm doing cross-examination, and there's some pretty talented people to do cross-examination in the Congress, I start with that. I start with the recordings and I go through that. So his lawyers have a pretty difficult time, I think, of preparing him. If you've watched him, he's pretty bombastic. He is, he's not exactly a calm individual. He takes on personas of being a fixer at times. I think it's going to be fun theater, frankly.
Fun theater we'll be watching. Shannon, what's the White House's take? Just pure Michael Cohen character? Assassination?
I mean, the concern from those close to the president is not so much that Michael Cohen in these testimonies this week for this meeting with Kim Jong-un. This is something that the president wants to be a historic moment, a Nobel Peace Prize type of moment, and, you know, honestly has a lot of national security implications to it if they can reach some sort of deal with North Korea. And overshadowing that, of course, next week is going to be Michael Cohen. So that is also a big concern for the White House.
Kathy, we know somewhat limited information, but we could know more about Cohen's ties to Donald Trump's businesses. Is there anything that he could tell Congress next week outside of it's entertaining, he's telling stories about President Trump's character that Congress could use?
Sure. He could talk about the financial transactions. He was an executive vice president, so in that capacity, he was a business person, and he was not, in fact, acting as an attorney. So those aren't privileged transactions. And you may recall the famous, I paid someone for not having sex, and I paid someone so that they would just be quiet and sign a deal. Those financial transactions, who authorized them, who told the CFO to be involved in them, who signed the documents. Now, if it's part of an ongoing investigation, it's correct. We may not be able to see those in public hearings. They may be behind closed doors because they are part of an ongoing investigation. But those are certainly fodder for people in Congress to be looking at and to examine exactly what happened. And in all investigations, particularly those involving white-collar criminals, you follow the money because that takes you to the people who are involved in things and you see where the money goes. And so if you find out who's behind the financial transactions and find out who authorized them, that can generally lead you to where the wrongdoers are, or at least who the decision makers are.
Take me to the Mueller report, Tom. Bill Barr gets it. Does he then have the power to decide or change the rules or make the rules around how to disseminate it and what to disseminate?
He can't change the rules because those have been prescribed and have already been put together. But I think what he can do, and what is typically the case, is that there can be redactions for people that haven't been explicitly charged, for people that typically we don't name people in the U.S. that haven't been charged with a crime for other illegal activity. I mean, that's usually not, the idea of an unindicted co-conspirator. The courts have generally ruled that information should not be made public. Whether or not that's appropriate here, whether or not we like that, whether or not that's what should occur, well, that's a whole separate story. But as far as the restrictions on what Barr can disclose, those are pretty clear. So I think, for people to think they're going to get a long narrative, something that, and my colleagues Pete Williams and Ken Delanian, I think, have laid this out well in some of their online stories, that people think that they're going to get the Ken Starr, several hundred-page narrative. Here's what happened. Here's who talked to this person and that person. Those files are still available online with respect to the investigation that eventually uncovered an affair involving the then President Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. I think if you're looking for that sort of narrative out of this, you're going to be disappointed because this is going to be because the regulations that were in place then and the independent counsel regulations that were in place then, those have now changed. And so there's a different regulations as far as how these reports should be put together, because back then they kind of found that, well, if we have future independent counsels, they're going to lead to these wide fishing expeditions, essentially, and then we're going to get these huge narrative reports that may not hold up necessarily in courts, narrative reports that may not be entered into court because there isn't necessarily a crime. So those regulations change. And now this really has to be tied to specific crimes, and I think that's why you're going to see that if there isn't specific criminal activity that violates a U.S. statute, the U.S. Criminal Code, we might not see that information, whether or not we think that behavior is unseemly, whether or not we think it's immoral, whatever we may think it is, it may not violate a crime, and so we may not see that detailed in a report.
All right, Shannon, we've read, or I believe it was Rudy Giuliani, I think told USA Today, they're working on a counter report. How do you put together a counter report when you haven't seen the initial report?
Well, they've actually been working on this for months and months. Jane Raskin, one of Trump's lawyers in Florida, has been the lead person working on this. I mean, they have seen the president's side of this. They've seen the documents that he has handed over to Mueller. They've worked with a lot of the witnesses, a lot of people in the White House who have gone and testified. So they think they have an idea of some of the things that will be in Mueller's report. So that's what they've been trying to counter. And then also their counter report would include their interpretation of the law, like what is the president's constitutional authority to fire the FBI director, for example. So that's what could be in there. But that's really sort of only one of the pieces of their response to all this. And that only is at the very end when and if Mueller's report actually gets made public. And I think Tom laid this out very well, that under the special counsel regulations, this is supposed to be a confidential report given to the Attorney General full stop. Some people would interpret it, that the Attorney General does not have to turn this over, and that the only disclosure requirement to Congress is if there's recommendations in there that aren't followed. But that doesn't mean the Attorney General couldn't turn it over anyway, and Democrats will certainly be trying to subpoena it and argue that, there's no prohibition on making the report public, so that means it should be turned over public. So there's going to be a really big battle, I see, that goes on before anything gets made public. So when this hits the desk, maybe the Attorney General will put out a summary in a few days or maybe a few weeks. But as far as actually getting to see the full actual report and the underlying documents, I don't know if the public will ever see that. And if they do, it will be after substantial court battles by the president and by the Justice Department if they choose to go down that path.
We got some breaking news, Tomas.
Yeah, just a quick update in a court filing that was just filed by Special Counsel Robert Mueller and his prosecutors. They were asked to show cause today involving an allegation that Roger Stone's attorneys made that CNN received an improper tip or leak of information about going to his house and getting that. And Special Counsel Robert Mueller's team, I'm just reading through this 5-page filing that literally just came in, is essentially saying, well, your own statements refute it, saying that CNN got a copy of the indictment before the arrest based on Roger Stone's attorney's own text messages. So they say that argument is void. In addition to that, they say, typically this is not something that we would have to show cause for, but, we do show you CNN's article, and CNN did lay out very clearly at the time how they were able to kind of guess and get in position and be able to get video of Roger Stone's arrest. So that's a filing that just came in. We'll digest it further, but I think at this point, it doesn't appear that this investigation, if you will, into this will go much further, at least as it pertains to the court.
All right, Kathy, Tom, Shannon, thank you so much. We're going to leave it there. Next, a federal judge ruled one of President Trump's cabinet members violated the law while he was a federal prosecutor. It all revolves around a plea deal that now Labor Secretary Alex Acosta struck for a billionaire accused in his sex abuse and trafficking of underage girls. You're looking at him right there, Jeffrey Epstein. And it's not just him, remember, he was protecting a whole lot of the most powerful men in the world. We've got new reaction from the White House. You're watching Dolce & Rule.
Opiates has taken everything and everyone I've ever loved away from me. Everything. I blew my ankle out and I got prescribed pain pills by my doctor. If making my detox public is going to help somebody, I'm all for it. I just wish I would have had a warning.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth. Spread the truth.
Every time you swipe your card, your big bank is likely hurting the planet and your wallet. Unfair fees, your deposits funding oil drills and pipelines. You can do better. Make the switch from your big bank to Aspiration. Aspiration helps you spend and save with a conscience. With Aspiration, you'll pay 0 fees at every ATM in the world, all while keeping your money safe and fossil fuel free. Join the nearly 1 million Americans who are making the move to save money and save the planet. Go to aspiration.com.
We use Angie's List because we can always find great local pros.
For any type of home project.
I use Angie's List if I need to find a plumber,
An electrician.
a painter.
I always use Angie's List because it's free. It's free for me to read reviews written by real customers.
We can check their reputation to make sure they do quality work. And now, to save time, Angie's List can actually match my project to a few qualified pros who can do the job.
To get the most reviews from real customers, all for free, go to angieslist.com today.
Hi, sweetheart. I know I should call, but I was in the neighborhood. I love this cookware. Did I get this for you?
It's actually from Wayfair, okay?
Look at this ottoman. Where'd you get this?
Still Wayfair.
Oh, this table. And it folds out.
Looks pretty good, Mom, don't you think?
Sweetheart, has your mother-in-law been here?
Mom, she didn't replace you. She's got Wayfair.
Oh, yes, that's nice. In my house.
If something happened to you, what would happen to them? Their home, their education, their future. You need life insurance. And chances are, SelectQuote can help you get it for less than $1 a day.
SelectQuote found Jacob 40, a $500,000 policy for only $19 a month. And SelectQuote found his wife Wendy, a $500,000 policy for only $17 a month.
Our secret? At SelectQuote, we aggressively comparison shop up to 10 highly rated companies to find you the company with the best rates.
We found Gary 35, a $1 million policy for only $22 a month.
Why pay more? Give your family the security they need at a price you can afford.
Call 1-800-709-0511 or go to selectquote.com now and get the insurance your family needs.
At a price you can afford. SelectQuote. We shop, you save.
What started as a call to action,
Every generation has to fight for freedom and equality.
turned into a culture war.
So being for equal rights is about being for an entirely liberal agenda.
With the Women's Movement re-energized, is now the time to revisit the Equal Rights Amendment?
We have to get our rights in stone.
On Account of Sex, narrated by Stephanie Rule, Sunday, March 3rd at 9 on MSNBC.
Welcome back. A federal judge ruled one of President Trump's cabinet members broke the law while he was working as a federal prosecutor in a child sex ring case. Did you hear what I just said? We were talking about President Trump's labor secretary, Alexander Acosta. The judge said while Acosta served as the Miami U.S. attorney, he violated the Crime Victims' Rights Act. Acosta and other federal prosecutors collaborated with lawyers of hedge fund manager Jeffrey Epstein to arrange a sweetheart plea deal. Dozens of underage girls say they were sexually abused by Epstein in a sex trafficking ring. But the deal granted immunity to Epstein and many of his unidentified accomplices, really rich guys. The deal also concealed all charges, victim information, and shut down an ongoing FBI probe into the case. Epstein pleaded guilty to just 2 state charges of prostitution, and he spent only 13 months in a county jail. But yesterday, the judge stopped just short of overturning the entire deal. And now there's growing focus on Acosta's role in all of this. Acosta now heads an agency with oversight over human trafficking and child labor, and he has yet to explain why he sealed the deal with an accused child sex trafficker. Today, the White House says it is, quote, looking into the matter. I'm joined now by the Miami Herald investigative reporter, Julie Brown, who I'm eternally grateful for the unbelievable reporting on this majorly important story. Julie was awarded the prestigious George Polk Award for her work there. It was published in a 3-part series called Perversion of Justice. I'm also joined by former federal prosecutor and my good friend Glenn Kirshner. My goodness, Julie. Acosta was nominated as labor secretary in 2017. Now he oversees child labor and human trafficking. He released this statement through a spokesperson that, I gotta be honest, I didn't even understand. I want to read a portion of it. The office's decisions were approved by departmental leadership and follow departmental procedures. This matter remains in litigation, and thus, for any further comment, we refer you to the Department of Justice. You know what? Maybe I'm actually going to go to Glenn. You're my legal beagle. What in the world does that mean?
You know, that's a whole lot of bureaucratic nonsense is what that is, Steph, because, listen, Acosta has been caught, indeed by a federal judge, having violated the Crime Victims' Rights Act. Let me tell you, that act came into existence in 2004, and I know the exact month because I was supervising about 25 to 30 federal prosecutors at the time, and we had to move at light speed to absorb it, understand it, train our prosecutors on it, and make sure we upheld every single right that victims now had under the law. And to see this reporting, remarkable reporting, as you said, that Acosta violated the rights of the most vulnerable victims. These are young girls, young ladies who are being sex trafficked, who are being abused by Epstein, who are being sexually assaulted, who were being given to other men to be sexually assaulted. And the deal that Acosta struck is criminal. Literally criminal, because he violated the rights that these victims had to be heard, to know what the deal was, to object to the deal in open court to the judge. And guess what? If the judge decided to accept the deal over their objection, these victims had a right to appeal it to an appellate court. And I'll tell you, this makes my blood boil as a former federal prosecutor.
It's not just Epstein, though. We keep just saying his name over and over. Julie, do you believe the full list of charges against Epstein will be released, but also actually who was in that all-star inner circle? I mean, it is the elite in business and politics.
Well, there certainly were a lot of people complicit in this, in Epstein's crimes. We know the names of a few of the women that were involved. They were recruiters who initially started out being probably sexually trafficked or abused when they were young, and we know that from his victims that once they became 17 or 18 years old, they were automatically too old for him. So what he did was he sort of transferred them into being recruiters for him and bringing him more young girls. So this was almost like a pyramid scheme where as they aged out, so to speak, they became recruiters. So we know that there were a lot of other people, recruiters. Of course, there were Johns that were involved in this. We don't know all of whom they are. The FBI files they've been releasing them gradually over the past year or so, but most of those documents are heavily redacted. They're unreadable.
Why?
So,
Glenn, go legal with me. Why are they heavily redacted? Who are they protecting? What would the reasoning be?
Well, listen, when you have juvenile victims, and it sounds like most or all of the victims were juveniles, then we regularly redact. We don't even put a juvenile's name in an indictment, which would be a public record. So we try to take pains to protect the victims. Of course, you know, that's a little ironic because the U.S. attorney at the time, Acosta, not only was not trying to protect the victims, but he was violating their rights. And
okay, just stay on that for a moment, because you obviously always want to protect a victim, but these victims were misled. They were misled about the FBI investigation being terminated.
They were misled, and you know they're involved in this litigation right now. And I think it's Judge Mara gave the parties 15 days to report back how in the world are they going to address what has now been fined as a violation of federal law by the prosecutors in this case. It's going to be really interesting to see, frankly, what the victims and their lawyers choose to do, because let me tell you, it's kind of a hollow victory when you say, well, you know what, we can void the non-prosecution agreement, we can begin to consider bringing federal charges again, but all these years later, guess what? The victims' memories have faded. The victims have tried to move forward and move on in their lives, and evidence has undoubtedly been lost over the years. A little bit of a hollow victory, because what will happen? These victims will have to testify at a new federal trial, and they'll get beat up by defense attorneys on cross-examination because, you know, this happened 10, 12 years ago. How can you possibly accurately remember? This is lose-lose for the victims.
This is awful in every way. I'm so sorry to the victims. I'm grateful for you two for helping us understand this today. It's a really important story. All right, moving on. We're going to take a very quick break. Can you believe the midterms? They're not over yet. Nope. North Carolina officials are now calling for a new election in a controversial congressional race after investigating allegations of ballot fraud. My friend Steve Kornacki will be here at the big board with exactly how this special election could make history. But first, you remember, this is February. We must celebrate Black History Month. NBC BLK is highlighting Black women who are making history and uplifting their communities. Today we want to tell you about Millie Brown, founder of Tears of a Mother's Cry in Baltimore. Brown founded the organization in 2007 and has helped more than 1,000 mothers cope after losing their children to violence.
I can't turn my back on these mothers and these families because they need me, because there aren't many people like myself that have stepped up and stepped out to help them. So I had to keep going for them. It took a long time for me to find out and figure out what it was, but this is definitely my purpose. And I just want to be able to put a smile on some mother's face because they're hurting so much and so badly. And this is what I have to do. I'm going to be doing this until the day I take my last breath.
What a woman. All month long, you can check out inspiring stories like Millie's at NBCNews.com/BLK/she-rise.
Kamala Harris trust gets put to the test. Joy Reid gets her candid take on the issues most important to voters. And Casey Hunt hits the road to see how the Senate News message fares off the Hill. Kamala Harris at 10 and at 7, Sunday on MSNBC.
Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance so you only pay for what you need. Great news for anyone who...
I'm the one who delivers the news around here. Liberty Mutual has just announced that they can customize your car insurance so that you only pay for what you need. This is Phoebe Buckley on location.
Thanks, Phoebe. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty. Hey, save your seat.
This round is on me. Hey, can you spot me?
Come on in. Find your place today with Silver Sneakers. Included with many Medicare plans. Call the number on the screen now or visit GetSilverSneakers.com.
What's your better? What could make your okay better? Maybe it's spending some time with family and friends, or updating your home the way you always planned. Or it could be just paying off some bills and credit cards. Or does better mean having some extra cash on hand when you need it?
Call right now to receive your free no-obligation info kit. The kit will show you how to get the cash you need using your home's equity as a reverse mortgage from AAG.
A reverse mortgage loan from AAG uses your built-up home equity to give you cash now. And when you need it in the future, pay it back when it works for you or in one lump sum when you leave the home. Makes sense to me.
If you're 62 or older and own your home, find out how you can access your home's equity to give you cash now and when you need it in the future.
So, what's your better?
Call 1-800-850-1314 now.
We're Carvana, the company who invented car vending machines and buying a car 100% online. Now we've created a brand new way for you to sell your car. Whether it's a few years old or dinosaur old, we want to buy your car. So go to Carvana and enter your license plate, answer a few questions, and our techno wizardry calculates your car's value and gives you a real offer in seconds. When you're ready, we'll come to you, pay you on the spot, and pick up your car. That's it. So ditch the old way of selling your car and say hello to the new way at Carvana.
Eating well doesn't have to be the same old boring routine. And with Green Chef, every meal is new and delicious. Our huge selection of meal plans are crafted to fit any lifestyle. Whether you're vegan, trying paleo, or starting keto, Green Chef's variety of curated meals make it easy to stick to yours. Every box comes with organic, pre-portioned ingredients and delicious recipes to enjoy week after week. Join those who have discovered why Green Chef is the most affordable meal kit for eating well. Go to greenchef.com/TV40, choose your plan, and get $40 off your first order today.
Cover it up. That's what I did when I started losing my hair. Then I realized I could actually do something. Now I use Keeps, the easiest way to keep my hair. And it only costs $1 a day, which means no more covering up. Get started at Keeps.com.
With the money I've made on Poshmark, I've been able to pay for all our family's vacations. I can pay for my wedding just on what I've made from Poshmark. I've made over $10,000 and I was able to buy my new car.
Download the free Poshmark app now.
Welcome back. For the first time, we're hearing from the Democrat in a contested congressional race in North Carolina. A happy one. Dan McCready, he spoke out this hour after the state's Board of Elections voted unanimously for a new election. It ends a months-long investigation into allegations of illegal activity involving mail-in ballots by an operative hired by the Republican candidate, Mark Harris. McCready said he is ready to fight again.
What can I say? It looks like we're getting a new election. That's why I'm so honored that y'all would come here today for this announcement and to let me share with you that I am running in the special election to represent the people of the United States. And I want to say right now that we are in this fight and we are going to win this fight.
I think I need a bell for it. It is historic. In the first time in history, in U.S. history, we're seeing a new election for federal office that has been called for election fraud. Guess who's here to break it down? My dear friend, NBC News national political correspondent Steve Kornacki joins me live. Hey, Steve, really quickly, I just taught you during the break. Ready? I want you to high five.
Oh, yeah. I leave your elbow here. Is that...
If you look at the other person's elbow, it's a perfect high five. There you go.
I hope that was a perfect high five.
It was, really quick. One more time. Ready?
Look, we're pushing our luck here.
Wasn't that a great
I'm going to have to look at the tape afterwards.
Have you always been a good high fiver?
Of course.
See, I've been terrible.
No, I'm terrible. I'm terrible at everything.
You're not terrible at
This is the one thing in the world I actually know something about. I made it.
I'm terrible at everything. Steve Kornacki.
You always set the bar. You set the bar low. It's,
all right,
it's
Steve,
easy
hit
to
it.
clear.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is the thing. We last showed this in our air, I think, in the year 2018.
We did.
This is what the map looked like. Remember, the blue here, 43 seats, 43 Republican seats the Democrats picked off. There were 3 Democratic seats that Republicans picked off. And so we kept on talking about that number, 40. The Democrats had the net gain of 40 seats. And yet, the 19th of North Carolina, as you say, has been uncalled all the way since last November. So there's still a chance here. It's a Republican-held seat. At least it was going into the election. So if the Democrats can win this new election, we will end up saying, no, it wasn't a 40-seat gain in the 2018 midterms for them. It was a 41-seat gain. They could actually post another gain. Again, Harris, the Republican.
But hold on.
Yep.
We know McCready's running.
Well,
It's Harris.
So this is the big question, right? McCready is in. Harris, if you watched that testimony yesterday before the election board there in North Carolina, he talked about having health issues. He talked about having it sounded like 2 strokes, 2 mini strokes, something like that. He comes in.
The stage for.
He hasn't said anything here, but the expectation right now, based on what went on in that hearing yesterday and this week, is that it's unlikely Harris is going to turn around and run again. What this means is there's going to be primaries in each party. Now, McCready probably going to get the Democratic nomination, but you might have a free-for-all there on the Republican side.
But what about Harris's ability to raise money?
Well, sure, but how has that changed by the events of this week?
I don't know. That might change.
This is somebody who went into the hearing saying, nothing to see here. I got the votes. I won this thing. Certify me. And who ended the hearing after his son appeared as a surprise witness basically against him, went after his son a little bit in some of his comments and said, you know what? I've changed my mind. This election was fraudulent. We need a new election. By the way, the reason I maybe gave you different testimony earlier in the week is it turns out I've got some health issues here. Might have clouded my... That was what we were hearing from Harris yesterday.
Health issues clouded his memory.
Well, but if you're going to invoke that in the hearing this week, is that going to make it harder for you to turn around and sell yourself as a potential candidate? Plus, are Republicans, based on the events this week, going to lose faith in him? Remember, Harris was the Republican nominee in this race because he narrowly, very narrowly ousted the Republican incumbent, Bob Pittenger, in the Republican primary last spring.
Pittenger could be ready for a comeback.
So this is not a guy, Harris, who had, unanimous party support behind him to begin with. He was the insurgent who barely beat Pittenger in the primary, got the Republican nomination, appeared barely to have won the seat in election night. So I think you're probably looking at an open Republican primary here, and probably.
So, okay, then what's the timing? So
it could be a while. The election was last November. We're now kind of getting into late February. They're going to have primaries in each party, so that's going to send you a few months into the future just to play out the primary process. Then you're going to have a general election campaign. The thinking right now, no date is set. October. General election maybe in October, maybe about 11 months after the original election. So finally, the final unsettled race of the 2018 midterms that will decide if Democrats actually get a 41 seat in that game, maybe October of 2019.
Justice, it takes some time. All right, you ready? I taught him at the beginning of the segment. Here we go again. You look at my elbow. I'm looking at yours. Take a breath.
All right, I hope I do this right. Boy, I hope I do this right.
Did you see that?
Did I get it?
I'm telling you, I was the worst high fiver ever, and someone took pity on me and taught me the elbow trick. All right, Steve, thank you. Up next, we got a serious one. New worries about fake news being spread about vaccines. Now members of Congress are demanding to know how social media sites are going to crack down on these conspiracy theories that are now contributing to more children getting sick with deadly diseases across the nation. We're going to dig into this. You're watching Velshi and Rule.
This is your time to buy the Honda Pilot LX. It has room for more, including seating for 8. It comes standard with Honda Sensing. And a stylish exterior that's perfect for a day with your kids or a night on the town. So come discover why the Honda Pilot is a KBB.com Best Buy for 2019. Hurry into your local Honda dealer and test drive the Pilot LX today.
At don't keep track of regrets, and I don't add up the years. But what I do count on is Boost.
Delicious Boost High Protein Nutritional Drink has 20 grams of protein, along with 26 essential vitamins and minerals. Boost High Protein. Be up for life.
I knew I put on a few extra pounds. I was really hard on myself. I was just tired of feeling like that. It was hard for me to shed the weight until Jenny Craig.
From a top diet 9 years straight comes Rapid Results by Jenny Craig. It's our most effective program ever, and you can start today.
I didn't think that it would happen so fast, but here I am.
Come in for free and connect with your dedicated weight loss experts.
The consultant makes all the difference. That's what made it easy.
With Rapid Results, the secret is what you eat and when. With delicious, chef-crafted food. Call now and get 5 days of free food and free shipping.
I love the food. The food is delicious. This is gonna help me lose weight. Are you serious? I just ate a chocolate cake. The consultants are amazing. The food is delicious. The program is the best. I mean, what do you really have to lose?
For a limited time, join Jenny Craig for free and get 5 days of free food with purchase. Hurry, call now.
Fact is, every insurance company hopes you drive safely. But Allstate helps you with DriveWise. Feedback that helps you drive safer, and that could lower your cost. Now that you know the truth, are you in good hands?
At Booking.com, we can't guarantee you'll find gold on your Wild West vacation, but we can guarantee the best price on that there rental cabin, or any hotel, home, boat, yurt, whatever. Just don't get carried away with the Wild West thing.
Hey guys!
Get the best price on homes, hotels, and so much more. Booking.com. Booking.yeah.
I'm mildly obsessed with numbers. So I started with the stats regarding my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. Like how Humira has been prescribed to over 300,000 patients. And how many patients saw clear or almost clear skin in just 4 months. The kind of clearance that can last. Humira targets and blocks a specific source of inflammation that contributes to symptoms. Numbers are great, and seeing clear skin is pretty awesome too. That's what I call a body of proof.
Humira can lower your ability to fight infections. Serious and sometimes fatal infections, including tuberculosis and cancers, including lymphoma, have happened, as have blood, liver, and nervous system problems, serious allergic reactions, and new or worsening heart failure. Tell your doctor if you've been to areas where certain fungal infections are common, and if you've had TB, hepatitis B, are prone to infections, or have flu-like symptoms or sores. Don't start Humira if you have an infection.
Want more proof? Ask your dermatologist about Humira. This is my body of proof.
Welcome back to Velshing Rule. The anti-vaccination movement is growing, and more children are getting sick, really sick, due to a new wave of conspiracy theories that have been shared through social media. Why does that matter? Well, currently in Clark County, Washington, an area known as anti-vax hotspot, there are now 64 confirmed cases of the measles. Of those, 56 were not immunized, and 6 are unverified. And measles is an extremely contagious, even deadly disease. In an effort to tackle the recent measles outbreak, Clark County's health director is spreading awareness about the dangers of online vaccine misinformation, warning it can all seem, quote, pretty sophisticated. The option to not vaccinate can be pretty simple. In a large majority of the country, Washington and 16 other states allow parents, by law, to opt out of vaccinating their children on grounds of personal beliefs. The anti-vax movement is not new, dating all the way back to the 18th century. But the most recent pushback stems from a fear that vaccines are connected to autism. This is a myth that has been debunked by many scientific studies. Now health experts across the country are demanding stronger legislation and a wake-up call, calling the movement a crisis as more and more kids are left at risk. But tackling the issue will take more than help from the Hill. The spread of anti-vax propaganda is a feat that all the tech giants are currently battling. The question is, are they doing enough? So far, Pinterest has made the most serious effort, blocking search results for the word vaccine altogether. Joining me now, NBC News senior business reporter Ben Popkin. Okay, it's great that Pinterest is taking this seriously, but I kind of feel like Pinterest is the least of our worries. What's Facebook doing? What's Twitter doing?
Right. Each of the different tech platforms have their own approach to this this idea, and the problem is the anti-vax idea. Ideas can be viruses too. And this is an idea that is contagious and can literally physically harm people, and so things need to be done to stop it. And so what the platforms are trying to do, they're trying to address things without getting into the free speech problem. They want to try to do things from the margins. Facebook says they've taken steps, knows it has more. Google has systems in place for prioritizing. Facebook says they're going to kind of lower how much it shows it. And Twitter says they want to make sure that there's a balance of information. People can get both pro-vax and anti-vax information, I guess. But these are facts. These are scientific facts. There should not be a debate about facts. And the problem is that these platforms, they're exposing people to information that can really harm them. They're operating as recruiting platforms. They're once you type in, for instance, I typed in vaccine into the top of the Facebook search bar, and 5 of the top 8 results that I got all seem to be pretty problematic to me. This means if you start going there just looking for something, it guides you to what people are calling a wormhole or a black hole. These algorithmic recommendations by the platforms, they say, oh, you like this one thing? I'm going to give you 20 different versions of it, and things that are data shows me are slightly more interesting or extreme or draw you in. And what that's drawing people down is to these conspiracy black holes, and can end up with kids sick or
But what's
worse.
the root of it and why? We've got here one example, a community Facebook page called Stop Mandatory Vaccination. It's liked by over 127,000 people. Who would be behind a movement like this? If what I said earlier is true, you've got scientific study after scientific study that's already busted this myth that it could cause autism. Who's driving this and why?
Well, there's some self-described activists, concerned parents, and the problem is they're not just spreading this misinformation. They're also making money off of it. There's a sort of a dark back end to these, where these groups, they're not just saying, we're going to protect kids. They're also saying, buy my herbal remedies instead of buying vaccines. Support the cause by buying my t-shirts. And so when you're letting spam marketers spam market anti-vax information, we need to crack down. We all agree, stop spam. Spam is bad. Why don't we stop spam that could actually end up with kids in the hospital?
I agree with you, Ben. We got to leave it there because we have breaking news. Singer R. Kelly has officially been charged of 10 counts of aggravated criminal sexual abuse involving young girls. Joining me now is NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalas. Danny.
What we're hearing is this is 4 different girls, ages 13 to 16, and that's where you get the aggravated criminal sexual abuse.
13 to 16.
Yeah, that's the ages that we're getting right now. 10 counts total, but 4 separate victims or complainants within those 10 counts. And the charges are related directly to the young, obviously these are very young children, and that's what aggravates it. That's what brings it up to a very serious crime in the state of Illinois.
If they press charges, if he's found guilty, what could he be facing in terms of punishment?
Prison time, mandatory lifetime possibly registration on the sex offender registry. These crimes are very, very serious. Aggravated sexual abuse in any state is a very serious felony.
How hard are they to prove?
The challenge, well, what we're hearing, and I'm not certain yet, but there may be more than just oath against oath type evidence. It may not be just he said, she said situation. But ordinarily, these cases can be difficult to prove if there's no science left, if there's no rape kit, if there's nothing like that, and all you have is one person's testimony versus another person's testimony. That can be very challenging. But where you have any kind of evidence, including video evidence, that is a tremendous boost to the prosecution.
My goodness. We're going to continue to follow this story. Many people have been waiting, saying, when is it going to happen? Well, it was today. We're going to leave it there. Ahead, the woman born in the United States who joined ISIS and moved to Syria wants to come home, and the United States won't let her back. Now that woman, who married 3 different ISIS fighters, is speaking exclusively with our own Richard Engel. He joins me live next with her message to the U.S. government. You're watching Velshi and Rule on MSNBC.
accidents can happen anytime. That's why Geico's here 24 hours a day, every day. Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
There's brushing. And there's Oral-B power brushing. Oral-B just cleans better. Even my hygienist said going electric could lead to way cleaner teeth.
And unlike Sonicare, Oral-B is the first electric toothbrush brand accepted by the ADA. Oral-B. Brush like a pro.
Hey, renovators. Time to dream bigger. Wayfair, you're my new secret weapon. You got what I need for my renovation. I love all these options, so much to choose from. Bedrooms and basements, even my kitchen, your service is sweet. And my job is complete. Wayfair, be like that. Start your renovation at wayfair.com.
We use Angie's List because we can always find great local pros.
For any type of home project.
I use Angie's List because it's free.
Free to read reviews.
Check their ratings.
They can even match my project to qualified pros.
Go to angieslist.com today.
I yo-yo dieted for years.
I counted the points, I followed the rules, and it didn't help me long term.
I was just so tired of losing the weight and gaining it all back.
But I found something new. It's called New.
It's not a diet. It's a totally different, personalized program.
That uses psychology and small goals to change your habits.
So that you can lose the weight.
And keep it off for good.
It's super easy to get started, so what do you have to lose? Visit Noom.com today and lose the weight for good.
Welcome to the place where people go to learn about their Medicare options before they're on Medicare.
Come on in. You're turning 65 soon? Yeah. And you're retiring at 67?
That's the plan.
It's also a great time to learn about an AARP Medicare Supplement Insurance Plan insured by United Healthcare Insurance Company. Here's why. Medicare Part B doesn't pay for everything.
This part is up to you.
A Medicare Supplement Plan helps pay for some of what Medicare doesn't. Call United Healthcare Insurance Company or go online for your free decision guide about the only Medicare supplement plans endorsed by AARP, selected for meeting their high standards of quality and service. This type of plan lets you say yes to any doctor or hospital that accepts Medicare patients.
Do you accept Medicare patients?
I sure do. To learn more, call or go online today for your free decision guide.
Oh, and happy birthday. Or retirement in advance.
In 1 week, a lot will happen in your life. Wrinkles just won't. Neutrogena Rapid Wrinkle Repair's derm-proven retinol works so fast, it takes only 1 week to reveal younger-looking skin, making wrinkles look so last week. Rapid Wrinkle Repair. Pair with new retinol oil for 2 times the wrinkle-fighting power. Neutrogena.
More Americans watch NBC News than any other news organization in the world.
We are back with more on our breaking news. Singer R. Kelly has been charged with aggravated criminal sexual abuse involving young girls. Joining me now, NBC's Renana Ellis. Renana, you've been following this for quite some time. What are these details?
Well, they're still coming out in terms of exactly what's happening here. Quite honestly, I am just reading it myself as this is breaking. But this involves a case with R. Kelly, who is a megastar in the music industry, and he has been under fire for a long time. As you know, recently there was a documentary, and the phone is ringing, that came out about him, and as a result of that documentary, alleging that he had been involved in sexual encounters with teenage girls, the prosecutor in Cook County up in Chicago issued an unusual plea, and that was for anyone who felt that she had been a victim of sexual abuse by R. Kelly to come forward. And people started coming forward. And we may see that some of these charges that are filed today against him may be a result of that, but we don't know yet. Again, as the particulars are still coming out. But it should also be mentioned that his attorney and R. Kelly have always stood by his innocence. As you know, that he was brought up on charges before, and he was cleared of those charges.
And why was he cleared before?
Because there wasn't enough evidence to convict him of abusing someone underage. And he continues to stand by that he is not abusing anyone. Now, you know that there are family members of one woman in particular whom we have had an opportunity to speak with, and they
insist that their daughter is under a spell by R. Kelly and that she is being held against her will in that.
And how old is she?
They say she's underage, but she says she is not.
My goodness, Rahima, this is a complicated situation. So, R. Kelly's attorney has always stood by his client, maintained his innocence. Do we know what he's going to say now?
I would suspect that he's going to say that he is not guilty of any of these charges. I suspect that he would continue to maintain his innocence as he has all along, even when the documentary came out about him, when allegations came out about him, when family members of a woman who is living with him have accused him of abusing their daughter. He has consistently maintained that he is not guilty of any abuse of underage women and that women are with him because it is what they choose to do.
So, I'm not sure if we know yet, so forgive me if we don't. These most recent charges, do we know if they're current? Do we know if the sexual abuse charges are around actions he took recently?
That I'm not sure because, again, as I said, I'm just seeing these charges and I haven't read the details of all of this. But we do know, again, that these are new charges today coming out of Chicago. And as I mentioned to you before, that he had been up on charges before. He was not found guilty of those charges.
Danny Savala still with us. Danny, how does it work, for example, if there's a situation where there's a family, parents who are saying our daughter is being held against her will and she's underage, or not against her will, she's under a spell, and the daughter's saying, nope, I'm of age and I'm okay. What do you do in that situation?
Legally, as long as the person is an adult, there isn't a whole lot that people can do. And this is something that comes up in estranged families and all kinds of different situations. Of course, if somebody lacks capacity to make decisions for themselves, that's when the state has an interest to step in and take care of them. But just to give you an idea of how serious these crimes are, this is a second-degree felony in Illinois. You're looking at least 3 years up to 7 years, and if Illinois sentencing guidelines allow to do what we call consecutive these sentences, then the judge can lay them end to end to end. So the way you figure out the maximum is you take the 10 counts, the maximum of 7 years for each count, and you're looking at potentially 70 years by my math.
7-0?
7-0 if all these sentences were run consecutively and they would be maxed out. Not likely to happen, but it's always important to talk about a statutory maximum when you're looking at felony charges.
And the charges in the past, have they all been in the state of Illinois?
I'm not clear on that.
But does Illinois have super strict law? Like, give me a compare and contrast if this happened in a different part of the country.
Well, the key thing that makes this a very serious crime is the relative age. And I say relative age because most states have a system whereby if somebody is close enough to the person's age and the child is 16 or if there's only a few years they have apart, they have what's called Romeo and Juliet statutes.
What is that?
That means that, for example, if a high schooler is dating someone who's a freshman, the penalty, no, freshman in high school.
Oh, I got it. So
they call it
like
Romeo
a
and
senior
Juliet, young
who's
lovers.
18
Yeah.
is with a freshman who's 14.
Exactly. Different penalty, which reflects society's view on sexual interaction at that age. However, in this case, R. Kelly is considerably older, well beyond that range that's provided for in the Illinois statute. So he would be in the aggravated criminal sexual abuse category, and that's what makes it so serious. It's this relative age difference that aggravates it, makes this a very serious crime with real prison time.
One of the things we know back in 2008, he was acquitted of 21 counts of child pornography. He always said that he was not guilty of any of those charges against him, and there have been consistently charges against R. Kelly. Now we hear that the first court date is coming up on March 8th, so we're going to learn a whole lot more.
My goodness, wow. Think about that. International Women's Day is going to be the day R. Kelly is showing support. Rahima Ellis, Danny Savalas, thank you so much. Thank you for watching this hour this week on Bell Sheet and Rule. I am Stephanie Rule. I will see you Monday. Actually, I have jury duty Monday, so I'm not sure. You never know. I might get picked. Now I don't know. I'm going to turn you over to Katie Tur. So let's say there's jury selection. Would you pick me?
I would. 100%.
I don't know why anyone would have picked one of us, honestly. No.
Do you know, I often think of who's on the grand jury right now dealing with the whole Russia investigation. I mean,
Fascinating.
Fascinating.
I mean, I would really want to be on that.
No, you wouldn't. Well, I mean, you couldn't even interface with your family. No. Hey, honey, what did you do today?
Yeah, but you know so much. I think it'd be very fascinating. One big question I have about R. Kelly, and we're going to talk about this in our show. We have some other big news we want to get to first, but what took this so long? I mean, these allegations, these rumors about R. Kelly have been out there for decades, and it's taken this long in a documentary to get to this point.
But maybe he's innocent.
No, yeah, of course. Of course, but looking into it, getting into the investigation, asking real questions about these allegations and what these girls have said about R. Kelly and what has been out there, it's just taken a long time. It is. Stephanie Rule. There's so much in this show. It's going to go by really fast, so everybody hold on to your hats. Let's start right now. It's 11 a.m. out west, 2 p.m. in Washington, where former acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe is standing by to speak to us in just a moment. But we begin with the White House bracing for the potential release of Robert Mueller's report as soon as next week. Drop date predictions range from any moment now, like maybe even 1 second, to the next couple of weeks. We don't know what's in the report, and presumably neither does the White House, but Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders says the president, his team of attorneys, and the administration as a whole expect vindication.
We feel good about the fact that what we've said all along for the last 2 years will be clear. There was no collusion. I mean, the idea that President Trump needed to collude with Russia in order to beat Hillary Clinton is frankly laughable. He was an infinitely better candidate with a better message, and he outworked her. That's why he won. It had nothing to do with Russia or any other country for that matter.
They expect vindication, but they're still preparing for bad news. Rudy Giuliani told USA Today Trump's legal team is putting together a rebuttal to Mueller's final report. Quote, if Mueller clears the president, we walk away and say thank you. If it is damaging, then we will respond. So the big question we are asking today is what's left and what's next in the Mueller investigation? Joining me now is NBC News correspondent Pete Williams. Pete, that question to you, what is left and what is next?
I don't know what's next. We've never known what's next with Mueller, but it does seem that he is about finished. All the signs point to the fact that he's wrapping up, he's closing down his office, and he'll be sending his final report as required by the special counsel regulations. Now, a couple of things about that. Number one, I think there's a widespread public misconception about what's going to be in this report. We can't say for sure, but we have been told by Justice Department officials that Mueller intends to follow the rules closely, and all they say is, when he's done, he gives a report to the Attorney General explaining his reasons for which cases he prosecuted and which cases he declined to prosecute. And that's it. Not a long recitation of how he spent his summer vacation, not a long recitation of everybody in the Trump campaign's contacts with any foreign government, none of that. And then there's even less of that gets reported to the Congress and made public. All the regulations say is that when the special counsel's work is done, the Attorney General notifies the chairman of the House and Senate Judiciary Committees that it's done, and explains any time that the Attorney General countermanded anything the special counsel wanted to do. That's it. Now, undoubtedly, we're going to get a little more than that. So that's thing one. Thing two is, when the report goes from Mueller to the Attorney General, don't expect it to be made public at that point. Don't expect anything to be made public then. And we may not even know when it goes to the Attorney General. It's not 100% clear that the Justice Department is going to tell us that. We've repeatedly urged them to do so, but apparently they haven't made any decision about that. But then the Attorney General is going to have to decide how much gets made public and how much goes to Congress, and that's going to take a while. So once the Mueller report goes, expect a long period of silence before anything else comes out.
So what should we expect, Pete, in terms of any more court filings or indictments? I know Paul Manafort, there's something happening with him today.
Right.
Should we expect to see an indictment? I know it's hard to predict these things, but I'm wondering if we're out there and we're thinking if this report comes in the next 5 minutes, does that mean all the indictments are over? Does the case get sent off to various different U.S. attorneys' offices or the SDNY or et cetera, or is that just the end?
So, yes to some of all of that. I don't think it's coming out today for various reasons that are sort of tedious, but I don't think it's coming. It doesn't seem to be that it's, I keep saying coming out, that it's going to the Attorney General today. In terms of the possibility of any more indictments, I suppose it's possible that there were some indictments filed under seal that haven't been unsealed yet, but there seems to have been in the last 3 or 4 weeks, month or so, very little activity by the grand jury that Mueller's been using. Yes, there is something coming from the special counsel's office today. They owe the judge in the District of Columbia Paul Manafort case a sentencing memorandum. They did one last week on the Virginia case. He'll be sentenced in both those cases next month, a week apart in both D.C. and Virginia. So, and yes, parts of the cases have already been spun off to local U.S. attorneys' offices. For example, the U.S. attorney here in Washington is picking up the Roger Stone case. But all the signs point to the bottom of the ninth for the Mueller team, and probably one out left.
NBC's Pete Williams. Pete, thank you very much. And joining me now is former acting director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe. He's the author of The Threat, How the FBI Protects America in the Age of Terror and Trump. Mr. McCabe, thank you very much for being here. I do want to dive right into Paul Manafort. A sentencing memo expected today. In the last hearing where Paul Manafort was present, Andrew Weissmann, one of the lead attorneys for the special counsel, was talking about a meeting that Paul Manafort, Rick Gates, and Konstantin Kilimnik had at a cigar club just down the street from where I am here in New York. And what happened during that meeting, whether or not Paul Manafort passed on potentially polling to Konstantin Kilimnik, what they were doing. Remember, they all left from separate entrances. And Weissmann said this in that hearing. This goes, I think, very much to the heart of what the Special Counsel Office is investigating. And there was an in-person meeting at an unusual time for somebody who was the campaign chairman to be spending time and to be doing it in person. That meeting and what happened at that meeting is of significance to the special counsel. Was that meeting on your radar at the FBI early on?
No, Katie, it wasn't. You'll recall that we were pretty early in the investigation at the point in May when Special Counsel Mueller was appointed, and at that point, all those investigative matters were turned over to his authority. So most of the progress, the indictments, the charges, certainly the guilty pleas and the sentencing memos that have come from that activity are all progress that we can attribute to the team that Director Mueller has been leading.
Was Paul Manafort's relationship with Konstantin Kilimnik known to you at the FBI early on?
Well, I can't say with great specificity what information we had in an ongoing case at that time, but I will tell you that we were certainly concerned and interested in Mr. Manafort for his long history of questionable interactions, business engagements, and political engagements with numerous figures in Ukraine and in Russia. So I'm not surprised that the special counsel team is very interested in that meeting. You know, Katie, you can think of it almost these sort of investigations, counterintelligence investigations, when you're looking for a connection, a possible connection between a subject and a foreign intelligence service, you kind of try to build those from both sides. What are the individuals who are associated with that service? What are they doing? What is your subject doing? Where are the communications going? Where are meetings taking place? And you're constantly trying to connect those two individuals. You don't always connect them perfectly in the same place at the same time, but this meeting is a remarkable set of facts, and it's one that I'm not surprised the special counsel is very interested in.
Was Donald Trump's campaign aware of the concern that federal officials had with Paul Manafort?
I can't speak for the campaign and what they may or may not have been aware of.
Were they alerted?
Well, you know, Mr. Manafort's activity in Ukraine, his connections to Russia were widely known. So it's hard to imagine that they didn't know that.
Were they alerted to the FBI potentially being concerned, or U.S. officials being concerned about Paul Manafort's relationships?
So I won't be able to discuss with you, Katie, specific things that may or may not have happened in the course of the ongoing case.
There are a lot of instances that have happened in the past 3 years that have raised a lot of questions, that have confused a lot of people. And it started very early on in 2016, but actually the end of 2015, when it came to Donald Trump and his affinity for Vladimir Putin. But there was one instance in particular in July of 2016, 2016, and you know it well, I know it well, I was there for it, when Donald Trump went and asked Russia to find Hillary Clinton's emails. I want to play that moment.
But it would be interesting to see. I will tell you this. Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. I think you will probably be rewarded mightily by our press. Let's see if that happens. That'll be next.
Okay, that's July 27th, 2016, the middle of the campaign. I know what I was thinking when I was in that room. What were you thinking when you saw that?
You know, I was shocked. I mean, the fact that a candidate for the presidency is openly exhorting one of our most formidable adversaries to conduct illegal activity on his political competitor is just something I've never seen in a democratic electoral process before. So I think I was shocked in the same way that you and everybody else likely was.
Was the FBI shocked in a deeper way, in a we need to look into this sort of way, rather than a I wonder why he would say that, let's scratch our heads?
You know, there were a number of those moments that caused us concern about what might have happened or what might be happening in the campaign, dovetailing with strange and unprecedented things that the candidate himself was saying, and that was certainly one of those moments. I think it's significant that the investigators on Director Mueller's team certainly followed that lead, followed that concern, and looked at the other side of the equation, right? Looked at what they know the Russian foreign intelligence officers were doing at that time. And they've now come pretty close to showing us that there may have been a direct response by the Russian hackers to do exactly what the president publicly asked them to do. We can't be sure of that. I certainly don't have a smoking gun that shows a connection of a request and a response between the two, but we have, we're told, forensic evidence of Russian computer hacking activity shortly after the statements by then candidate Trump, activity that was perfectly in line, or seems to be in line with what he was asking for.
Was there
that
talk
is unbelievably
of
concerning.
opening an investigation into Donald Trump or his campaign?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Was there talk at that time of opening an investigation into Donald Trump or his campaign because of a statement like that?
We had a lot of conversations at that time about that exact issue. We were already investigating the campaign. As the leader of that campaign, it was somewhat obvious that his own activity and his own responsibility was already coming within the purview of our investigation. But it wasn't until May of 2017 when we decided the facts had become overwhelming. The evidence and information we had in our possession clearly indicated an articulable basis to believe that a crime may have been committed or that a threat to national security existed, and it was time to, in earnest, focus our investigative activity on the president himself.
Let me play another moment. This one is from May of 2017, part of that infamous 8 days in May, where Donald Trump sat down with Lester Holt here at NBC News and said that Russia played a part in his decision to fire James Comey.
Regardless of recommendation, I was going to fire Comey. But I said to myself, I said, you know, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story.
Again, I know what I was thinking. What were you thinking?
Well, Katie, it was just, I mean, we were gobsmacked. It was incredible. I have to set the context for you a little bit. This was immediately, 2 days after the firing of Jim Comey, very shortly after I had directed the team to go back and reevaluate what we were doing and come to me with a recommendation for additional steps to take, cases to close or cases to open. I was testifying in front of the Senate Intelligence Community that day, already being publicly pressed about whether or not there had been any effort to to impede our Russia investigation. That's the exact question we were thinking about at that time. We were incredibly concerned by the steps that the president had taken to fire Director Comey after, of course, we refused to follow his request in dropping the case on Mike Flynn. So when we heard that statement, and then, of course, the later comments that the president made to the Russian foreign minister in the Oval Office, we knew that we had no choice but to then start investigating in earnest the President of the United States.
So the question of collusion still has not been answered by any of the filings by the Mueller team. We're going to find out if that question gets answered when Mueller's final report goes to Bill Barr, and if Bill Barr releases that to Congress, and then that gets to the public. That's an unknown right now. But what we do have, and what we've seen a lot of over the past 3 years, or 2 years, is Donald Trump pushing back on this investigation. The charge of obstruction has been raised multiple times in multiple different ways. We have just a short-ish list of all of the ways that the president has been accused of obstruction just in the past few years. Everything from asking James Comey for loyalty, asking Don McGahn to stop Jeff Sessions from recusing himself, twice ordering Robert Mueller to be fired, writing Don Jr.'s statement about the Trump Tower meeting, all the ways that he potentially tampered with witnesses, intimidated witnesses online. The lawyers for Donald Trump broaching the idea of pardons with Michael Flynn and Paul Manafort's lawyers. If you were prosecuting a case of obstruction, would you have enough to get that prosecution?
Well, here's what I'll tell you, Katie. Obstruction is always a fascinating investigation. And once you have an actual act that you think may have been the act of obstruction, the question then becomes, what was the intent behind that act? And that's something that can be very hard to prove. In this case, you have, as you've just recited, so many statements, so many additional acts, the clear desire. The president has on, I couldn't possibly count how many times, clearly indicated his distaste for this investigation. He demeans it consistently. He attacks the investigators themselves personally. There is no question. He does not want this case to go forward. So from my estimation, based on the experience I've had as an investigator for many years, there is clear indication of his intent, his desire to make this investigation stop and go away. You combine that with an act like firing the director of the FBI or many other things that we've all seen take place, it's hard to imagine that were he a regular citizen conducted the same sort of activity, it's hard to imagine that you wouldn't be in a position to be able to go forward with an indictment or charge. Now this is it. He is not a regular citizen. He's the president of the United States. The Justice Department has a long policy of...
But that's just a policy, it's a memo. Do you believe that that would hold up in court, that you can't indict a sitting president?
Well, I don't know. I know the Justice Department is pretty resolute in that belief that a sitting president cannot be indicted, and I guess we'll have to see how that plays out.
One final question. We've been talking about this investigation now for multiple years. The public has formed a lot of opinions on it on both sides. There's been a lot of information. There's been a big effort by the president's team to call this all one big witch hunt and to raise the bar very high on this. What do you expect, or what do you want the public to take away once this comes to an end? If Robert Mueller makes a decision that somebody in the public doesn't agree with, would you urge them to trust him? What do you think should happen after this?
I think that people should take very seriously whatever conclusions the Mueller team brings to the table, whether they support your own personal political preferences for or against the president or any of his associates. I am confident that Director Mueller and his team have pushed this investigation in an aggressive and forward-leaning way. They've gone in every direction they possibly could go. They are people they're professionals of the highest integrity. They will deliver the result, the independent, competent, professional result that they've come to, and I think we should pay that great heed.
Just one final question. I know I already said final question, but I'm going to give you one more. Would you be surprised if Robert Mueller does not find any evidence of conspiracy?
won't be surprised by anything at this point. But whatever Robert Mueller comes forward with, I'll take his conclusions to heart and give them the respect they deserve.
Former acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe. Mr. McCabe, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Katie.
And breaking news, former R&B superstar R. Kelly is facing criminal charges. The singer, whose real name is Robert Kelly, was charged with 10 counts of aggravated criminal sexual abuse. He denies any wrongdoing. Kelly's been under increased scrutiny after a documentary aired earlier this year detailing the musician's alleged predatory behavior. Joining me now, NBC News correspondent Rahima Ellis and criminal defense attorney Katie Fang. She's also an MSNBC legal analyst. Rahima, what's going on?
Well, we're still trying to find out the details of this. The prosecutors in Cook County up in Chicago are expected to hold a news conference sometime this afternoon, and we will learn more. But to your point of these 10 counts of aggravated sexual abuse against this Grammy award-winning singer, it is out today. There have been allegations that or suspicions, I should say, that the charges would be filed against R. Kelly. As you point out, there was a documentary earlier this year that pointed to suspicions of him abusing young women who were minors, teenagers, some as early as young as 13 years old. Also suspicions that he might be engaged in something as a sex cult. To your point, he has repeatedly denied any accusations of any improper sexual behavior with anyone, including minors. And we should point out that in 2009, he was brought up on charges of having child pornography. He was not found guilty of those charges, and he continues to maintain his innocence now.
What was revealed in this documentary?
It was some very lurid details about how he was engaging with, again, minors, holding women against their will, about having his will over these women, you might say. And in fact, some families have come forward saying, one family in particular saying that they think that their daughter had been under a spell, if you will, by R. Kelly, and they were doing all they could to try and get her out of what they consider to be his clutches. But the young woman denies that she's being held against her will, that she's doing what she wants to do. But now we have these charges coming out of Chicago, once again saying that R. Kelly, and not just saying, but charging him with improper sexual behavior, particularly involving minors, we think as young as 13 years old.
How many
13 to
victims?
16. There could be 4 victims. We're steering clear from that right now. Again, this is breaking, and we don't have all the details. I have not yet seen the actual indictment, so I don't want to go into the particulars of it at this point, but these are very serious charges with 10 counts of aggravated sexual abuse being filed against R. Kelly, a man who's been under fire, you might say, for almost 20 years.
I am told that we are unclear on the number of victims. We're still waiting for confirmation of that from prosecutors out there in Illinois. Katie, what's this process going to look like? What should we expect to happen next?
So the 10 counts that R. Kelly is facing, each one is a Class 2 felony in the state of Illinois, Katie. So he's looking at 3 to 7 years in prison for each of the 10 counts. As you just noted, the number of victims is unclear, but by nature of the fact that the charge is aggravated sexual criminal abuse, we do know that the victims have to run in age from ages 13 to 17 years old, which frankly, Katie, would be consistent with what has been alleged to be the MO for somebody like R. Kelly. What's going to happen is his next court date is March 8th. He will then have to be arraigned. He will presumptively enter a plea of not guilty, and there will have to be a trial. Rahima duly noted that back in 2008, R. Kelly was acquitted for child pornography charges. But you know, Katie, he has faced multiple allegations. He's been sued civilly several times, and interestingly, he has settled all of those cases outside of court. But in terms of criminal charges, this is going to be the second round for somebody like R. Kelly. Many people are coming forward and saying for the victims who have been around for years, it's finally a day of reckoning for somebody like R. Kelly. But we know that he has a powerful criminal defense team behind him, and that he will put up a huge fight if this thing goes to trial.
What has taken so long? Because these allegations, Katie, have been out there for a long time, and there are people out there who will say that race played a role in this, that the victim's race played a role in this. What do you make of that? How can you address that?
Well, I don't think race played a role, Katie. I think what ends up happening is, like, unfortunately, with many sexual assault victims, they're loath to come forward. They're either manipulated by R. Kelly, allegedly, or they're scared to come forward. What we do know is Michael Avenatti, who we know is the lawyer for Stormy Daniels, represents who we are calling a whistleblower, a man who worked for several years for R. Kelly, who was actually being able to take a 42-minute videotape that Michael Avenatti produced to the Cook County DA's office. This man was able to not only identify the victim, but he was able to identify R. Kelly, of all people, that was committing sex acts in that video with a 14-year-old girl. And so because of that, I think the Cook County DA's office finally had what we're going to call corroborating evidence of R. Kelly allegedly committing sexual acts with a girl between the age of 13 and 17, which has now given rise to these felony charges.
Katie Fang and NBC's Rahima Ellis. Ladies, thank you very much. And the decades-long owner of the New England Patriots has been charged with 2 counts of soliciting prostitution. Robert Kraft was one of more than 24 people charged today at the end of a months-long investigation into human trafficking, a human trafficking ring that reportedly stretched from China to Florida. Again, Kraft is charged with solicitation. We just got a statement from the NFL. Quote, the NFL is aware of the ongoing law enforcement matter and will continue to monitor developments. Joining me now, NBC News correspondent Kerry Sanders. He's outside the police department in Jupiter, Florida. Kerry, what's going on down there?
Well, Katie, this was a multi-agency investigation that spanned 6 months from Orlando down along the east coast of Florida, where the authorities say it all began with a complaint to the health department. Somebody who had gone into one of these storefronts in a strip mall that was allegedly a massage parlor. And once the health department started looking into it, they contacted police and said, this looks like it's much more. And as you noted, they were alleging that this was a human trafficking operation, bringing young girls from China to New York and then depositing them at various massage parlors in Florida and basically trapping them there. The authorities say they didn't speak English, they didn't have anywhere to live, so they essentially lived in the same places where they worked. And it's alleged that while they were working there, they had to service somewhere from 6 to 8 men a day, paying somewhere between $60 to $100, and then a tip on top of that. And of course, they say it was all a front. It was not a massage parlor, but rather prostitution was taking place. Among the evidence that they have collected here would be the seminal fluids from some of the locations out of the trash. And so while Robert Kraft is saying, and is not charged with anything to do with human trafficking, simply allegedly one of those who went in looking for services, it would be a misdemeanor in Florida, punishable by 60 days in jail, a $500 fine. But the bigger picture here for those who have been handling this investigation is that it takes the clients to lead to the criminal conspiracy to bring people all the way from China and turn them into sex slaves. Katie?
NBC's Kerry Sanders. Kerry, thank you very much. And next, we'll debrief what we just heard a moment ago from FBI Director Andrew McCabe, plus the potential for blockbuster testimony next week from Michael Cohen on Capitol Hill. And we're still waiting for the special counsel to file a sentencing memo in the case against ex-Trump campaign chair Paul Manafort. It is a busy, busy, busy day. Again, we will be right back with much, much more.
Kamala Harris gets put to the test. Joy Reid gets her candid take on the issues most important to voters. And Casey Hunt hits the road to see how the senator's message fares off the Hill. Kamala Harris at 10 and at 7, Sunday on MSNBC.
Flight number 417 is behind.
You should be mad at airports.
Where's gate 87?
You should be mad at non-seasoned travelers. And you should be mad at people who take unnecessary risks.
My emotional support.
But you're not mad, because you have E-Trade. This tech helps you understand the risk and reward potential on an options trade.
Hey, it's not liquid orange.
And even explore what-if scenarios. Don't get mad. Get E-Trade and start trading today.
I'm really into this car, but how do I know if I'm getting a good deal? I tell TrueCar my zip or which car I want, and TrueCar shows the range of prices people in my area actually paid for the same car, so I know if I'm getting a great price. This is how car buying was always meant to be. This is TrueCar.
The best part about being a bath fitter installer is the reveal. Homeowners greet us in the morning and love that we're going to install a beautiful new tub right over their old one without tearing the bathroom apart. But they're never quite prepared for what they get come the end of the day. We call it the wow moment. When they see their new bathtub that's high quality and more beautiful than they could have imagined, I can't help but smile. Since it's Bath Fitter, it's built to last the